Hi everyone, welcome to this week's Halton Hills housing update. So March has started off pretty good. A few weird trends, but overall we've had a really good week in sales, which is so promising, and not a crazy amount of new listings. So looking at this week, Georgetown had 12 sales, which is a totally good week for Georgetown. I'm going to take 12 sales any day of the week because we have had a lot of weeks where that has not been the case. So 12 sales to me is a good sign. We only had 13 new listings too. So that is great to not see the amount of new listings hitting the market be like a crazy number. In Acton this week, we had 4 sales and 1 new listing. So we almost sold as many properties in the last week in Acton as we did for the entire start of the year. So that is probably a good sign for the Acton market, and only 1 new listing, so inventory also not climbing there. Glen Williams has been stable, no sales and no new listings, and the rural market saw 1 sale and 2 new listings. But something of note, we did have 8 properties come off the market last week, which is a pretty significant number, and we had 9 properties that relisted and adjusted their price downward. So we are seeing that downward trend still on pricing. Like, the prices are soft, there's no going around that, but having weeks like this where our sales are high is like some promise that our pricing is going to maybe turn around at some point in the spring market. Something to note though, of the 17 sales that we had in all of Halton Hills, only 4 of them were over $1 million. So the far majority of properties selling were under that $1 million mark. So a lot of our big ticket stuff is sitting there and not a lot of movement. But then in the same breath, of the 16 new listings that we had, 11 of them were under $1 million. So the majority of stuff selling was under $1 million, but the majority of stuff coming on the market was under $1 million as well. So going to be watching that trend to see what's happening with our kind of higher price points. Another interesting thing, like Acton had 4 sales last week, but it was all really low stuff. Like the average price of what sold last week was $605,000. So even though we saw sales in Acton, prices have come down pretty significantly there, and it's just not a super strong market. Georgetown's average was $916,000. So still showing that that lower pocket is pulling our average pricing down. It will be interesting to see how that continues through the rest of March. We know that when the lower stuff starts moving, it fuels our upper price point market. So we're just going to be watching that. So now looking at our active listings this week, and because of how many properties sold and were terminated, our inventory is actually down. So we had 161 available last week. We are down to 156 active listings in Halton Hills. This is still a relatively soft number, in my opinion. We were close to 300 last year. So we are about half of where we were. So inventory is still soft. Georgetown is down from 97 to 95 active units. That is fine. I mean, like, again, we were at 170, so 95 feels very refreshing, and there's a nice variety of products, and a lot of stuff is priced well. So we do have 11 of those 95 properties in the sold conditional status, so those could be reported next week as sales. So lots of movement happening, which is kind of how I felt like going out into the world this week with like the weather being so nice. Kind of seeing this report has made me be like, maybe like there's breath in our market. Looking at our price points, under 800,000 is up from 17 to 21 active listings. So I talked about how majority of our listings are in the lower price point. This number tells you that. 800 to $1 million is down slightly from 32 to 28 active listings. 1 to 1.5 million is down slightly also from 36 to 34, and 1.5 million plus remained the same at 12. So I think that our upper price points, although not seeing a ton of sales, are also not seeing a ton of listings, and most of our movement is under that $1 million mark right now. Acton this week is down significantly because they like sold a bunch of houses. So Acton is down from 17 to 14 active listings, which is a low-ish number for Acton. It's not a single digit, which would be like a low number, but 14 is not a lot of available products. And there's a lot of I'm gonna like, there's a lot of cheap stuff available in Acton right now. So if you're in the market, take a look there. Glen Williams this week remained the same at 5 active listings. So inventory is very, very low in the Glen. And the rural market remained the same at 42 active listings. So pretty high for the rural market, not the highest we've seen, but 42. There's a ton of stuff available in the rural market, but a lot of it is that higher ticket property. There is a bunch of stuff under $1 million, which rarely happens in the rural market, but a lot of it is that higher ticket stuff where we're just not seeing it move. So overall, like I was saying, I feel good about this update. We have a lot of properties transacting, in the process of transacting, and that is just a good sign that buyer activity is not at a standstill. I will say, like, it's very listing dependent. You know, some products are coming up and they're getting an offer in the first day or two, and then other things are still taking some time because of like niche buying pools. But it's still just overall, when we look at where the market was, especially in February, this is a really good sign. Like, we had 17 sales, which is in the first week of March, basically, which is half of what we saw in all of February. So we're on the right track, I think, especially knowing how many are in sold conditional. Overall, I feel like this is a promising update, both for sellers and for buyers. Like, it is nice to have a healthy movement in the market. So we'll have to see how next week goes and if the numbers continue to trend as nicely as they are right now for our spring market. So I will be back next week. Have a great week, everyone.